Isle Palms Council meeting. Today is Tuesday, April 27th, 2021, and as we all know, this is a semi-virtual meeting due to the COVID-19 pandemic. I say semi because we are meeting in chambers, but we cannot fill up our chambers. We hope we will be meeting again in person in council chambers in the not so distant future. I would like to call this meeting to order and acknowledge both the press and the public were duly notified of this meeting in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. Feel free to join me or not as I say a prayer followed by the Pledge of Allegiance and then roll call. Heavenly Father, I thank you as we continue to work through all of our challenges and with your guidance have learned to adapt. That while we all have challenges, instead of fighting one another, that we work together in harmony when there is disagreement. I ask for your guidance in addressing these and any other challenges for the betterment of not only our island, but for everyone. I thank you all for what you have blessed us with and ask you to look over not only our families, our residents, our city family, but especially our public safety personnel, our healthcare providers, and our military who go to the extremes of working around the clock. I thank you for the freedoms, which include the freedom of speech. Help guide us tonight as we make decisions that impact us for not only now, but for future generations. It is in your name I pray, amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. City Clerk Nicole Devine, roll call, please.
Councilmember Powell.
Here.
Councilmember Smith. Here. Councilmember Bell.
Here.
Councilmember McCune. Here. Councilmember Ward.
Here.
Councilmember Moore.
Here.
Councilmember Streetman.
Here.
Councilmember Popson.
Present.
Mayor Carroll.
Here.
You have a forum.
Thank you very much. Citizens' comments. I don't believe we have any, but we do have a special guest tonight. We have Isaac Kramer, Assistant Director of Charleston County Board of Elections, to give us a little presentation. And I believe here he is. Welcome.
Welcome. Hey, thanks for having me tonight. My name's Isaac Kramer, actually the Executive Director. So I'm in charge of elections here in Charleston County. And I just wanted to give, I know that there have been some questions about election ordinances and what can be done in an election year. So number one, as council, you are able to amend your election ordinances. And I know there was questions about the timeline of when you can take office. So the town of Mount Pleasant, right next door to you, they actually take when they are elected, they take their seat at the first council meeting following the election in November. So that's a pretty quick timeline. That's usually how it is for many of the jurisdictions. I know City of Charleston does similar to what you all do. Sullivan's Island, it's about a month. So their May 4th election, their council will be seated in June. So if that's something you wanted to visit and you wanted to pass an ordinance, you can do that. So that's within your right at any point during the election calendar. So just clearing that up. And just wanted to say that today we were actually just right down the road in Sullivan's Island for absentee voting. We purchased a satellite voting unit, and that's able to bring our office to the local community. And one of the things we find being in North Charleston and being sometimes a 30 to 40 minute drive for island residents, we had over 161 people vote today. And that's record breaking for us for a municipal election. So we plan for November to come to Isle of Palms to conduct absentee voting and be a service to the local residents on Isle of Palms. So be excited for that. The Sullivan's Island got to see the sneak peek of it when having the trailer wrapped and everything. So we're really excited to offer that service to the voters of the city of Isle of Palms. And also, I know that currently your elections, you have a runoff method. And a lot of the jurisdictions here in Charleston County actually have a plurality. So whoever gets the most votes in the first round of voting, that's it. That's the most votes win. And I know previously you've had runoffs, and that's a further cost to the city, and also usually the participation for voters is significantly down during the second election, especially that election is usually around Thanksgiving week. And it's a quick turnaround from the first election being 2 weeks later. So basically, just wanted to introduce myself, Isaac Kramer. Joe Debney left at the end of the year of 2020, and I was recently appointed last week by my board. And I wanted to introduce myself because anything with elections, I'm here to serve you, answer any questions that you may have, but also let you know that we're right down the road, even though it's 30, 40 minutes away, and we're wanting to bring our office to the community. And my recommendation, just for what I've kind of talked to some folks about, was the election ordinance for your council. You can make that change. You can do that, and you can have that taken effect right after the election. You can write that in ordinance, whatever you see fit. And then I would love for you to explore the option of doing a plurality method, which is whoever gets the most votes wins, rather than having a majority method, which is you take the total seats to fill divided by 2, and that's the minimum threshold. And what we'll see is sometimes we'll have runoffs for those elections, and if not enough people filed, when there's a write-in campaign, usually what will happen is we'll have a runoff between 2 candidates who didn't even file for office. So that's all I really have tonight to say, and just thank you for having me. And I look forward to coming in person, saying hi to everyone.
Let me apologize. I did have a new director, so I apologize for that. Congratulations. And thank you for the information. Anyone have any questions?
Yeah, he's not going to stay at the meeting for your discussion about plurality authority at the end of the meeting. So you all want to take advantage of him being here for any questions.
Councilmember Moy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Kramer. And he can answer it roughly. As we're evaluating and discussing this evening the differences between majority plurality, it sounds like your recommendation is plurality, and I understand the pros and cons of each of those things. For us and for me, my biggest thing is making sure that we are capturing the majority of our residents, and that we're in our elections, that we're reducing the amount of kind of voting strategies and games, and we're just really trying to capture what is the majority of our community want. And again, I can see both the pros and cons of each of those. I wonder, related to voting options, I would strongly advocate for a single election where we come out, we have definitive winners without having to have runoffs. Are you familiar with the ranked choice approach? And have you seen that work in any communities locally? Any comments on taking that? Because to me, it seems like that's a little bit of a blended approach that avoids the runoff, avoids the concerns all that come with any secondary elections, but allows for a better representation of what the majority want.
So that's a great question. Ranked choice voting, actually, we currently do in South Carolina for military and overseas voters. They are ranking their choices in case of runoffs, especially military personnel who are in remote parts of the world serving our country. Unfortunately, that's not the way for voting for civilian slash local residents. We are under the South Carolina law for the current system. And as much as I would love to pilot, which we could pilot, a ranked choice voting system, we're allowed to do that under provisions of law. It would not be the norm going forward unless the legislature were to make changes to how we conduct elections. Just to answer your question about participation, it is a fact that the second election 2 weeks later, the turnout is significantly lower And that's across the board, no matter if it's a big election like the June primary, no matter what, that turnout is significantly lower. And a lot of times what you have is voter confusion. People, they're like, what's going on with the election? Yeah, I don't understand why we're having another election. So really, in our office's standpoint, having one election will save the city money, but also will increase the participation of your voters in who has a say on who's in council or mayor. And then to follow that up real quickly with a similar point is Town of Mount Pleasant. If you recall, a couple of years ago, they had a special election. They had an election, and then they had a runoff. But then in the middle of that was House 99, District 99 for the State House. They also had a special election in between those two elections. So what happened was you had 4 elections within a 4 or 5 week time frame, and it was very, very low turnout. And Town of Mount Pleasant actually went to a plurality method recently, and part of the reason was because of the voter participation is significantly lower the second time for the election.
Hearing none. Isaac, thank you very much for being with us tonight. And again, congratulations.
Appreciate
We look forward to seeing that bus out here. Moving on, consent agenda. Let's see if we can't go through all. Approval of previous meetings minutes. Regular meeting, March 23rd, 2021. Special meeting, April 6th. Special meeting, April 16th. Those are all under A. B. Approval of FY22 CTCC funding request for the Waterway Boulevard multi-use path elevation project, the Phase 3 drainage forest trail outflow improvement project. Approval of replacement of 2003 Mack flatbed truck in the amount of $97,260. D, approval of replacement of tables and chairs from the public safety buildings, training room, and emergency operations center in amount of $21,816. E, approval of application for funding for the MUSC Hollings Cancer Center's Lovello bike ride event in amount of $10,000. And lastly, but not least, F, approval of amount not to exceed $15,000 to engage a traffic engineer for the review of the recent modifications of the Owl Ponds connector and represent the city in discussion with SCDOT and other stakeholders regarding potential solutions to address traffic congestion. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Second. Second. Hearing no discussion. Nicole? Oh, Ryan. Oh, no.
Thank you.
Thing.
All right, I'll let you go then. Councilmember Buchanan? Aye. Councilmember Bell?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith? Aye. Councilmember Towns?
Aye.
Councilmember Ward?
Aye.
Councilmember Boyd?
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman?
Aye.
Councilmember Thompson?
Aye.
Mayor Carroll?
Aye.
All in favor?
Thank you very much. Moving on.
Quick point of order. I'm sorry. For in person, do we need to continue with roll call voting?
To be honest with you, it is easier. It's a better record of it, just in my opinion. You guys can do whatever you want.
You got it.
But it's also, I found when I left for the special meeting last week, whatever it was, and you called the roll, I actually couldn't hear what Councilmember Ward said. Kind of figured he'd said no, but I wasn't certain. And so I had to email him that. I think it's better.
We did have one.
Okay.
Is that okay? I mean, you
Oh,
can figure it
absolutely.
out.
we're good.
So back to roll call.
No,
No, I think we're,
That's good.
Wait,
We're good. All right, Ways and Means Committee. Chair.
Yep, thank you. Mayor, we'll do a quick financial report. We've got one item to vote on, and then I'll do a quick minute review. So Ron, I guess for people that may be viewing, if you put up a one pager, this is council, this is in your packet. So these are financial results through March 31st. You can see our revenue is just under 16 million against a budget of 18 million. We are forecasting we'll hit the end of the year with about 20.4 million. So a really good year against our budget that nobody had any idea where we were going to wind up. So really good news from a revenue standpoint. Expenses are just over 14 million year to date. against a budget of about 24.5. We're projecting to be just under 20, but a good chunk of that we are moving to fiscal year 22 due to the phase 3 drainage as well as replacing the new fire trucks. So not a real savings, just a push from year to year. General fund will probably end the year with a revenue over expenses of about 650,000. Again, just really great news given where we started the year. We have cash on hand at the end of March of about 26 million. However, about 6 million of that are unspent bond proceeds that haven't gone towards our projects yet. And about 8 million is restricted for tourism and or beach preservation. So we have about $12 million roughly that is unrestricted. Questions on finances? We have one item to vote on that's included in your minutes. We talked about this at Ways and Means Committee meeting last week, but we didn't have complete documentation in the packet. So this is for consideration of recommendation from the Public Works Committee to approve a change order to the Thomas and Hutton contract in the amount of $40 for additional permitting efforts for the phase 3 drainage project. So I'll make that the form of a motion. Questions, comments? You recall we had a presentation last week from Thomas and Hutton, and they were also at the Public Works Committee earlier in the month. And if you haven't seen that, I would really recommend you do that. Speaking to the public primarily, but so any questions, comments? This is just around the additional permitting that's happening with primarily 41st happening. Nicole?
Councilmember Popson.
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Lloyd.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan.
Aye.
Councilmember Bell.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Pound.
Aye.
Mayor Carroll.
Aye.
All in favor?
Thank you very much.
So Mayor, real quick, the Ways and Means Committee meeting was last week, 6 p.m. Tuesday on April 20th. We had a number of items that we had on the consent agenda tonight. One of the items, however, was on the fiscal 22 draft budget, and we've got a first reading of that later tonight. Again, a presentation from Thomas and Hutton on the phase 3 drainage report, small internal projects, and the Waterway Boulevard multi-use path elevation project. Most of the other items are consent agenda. We had a discussion, fairly quick discussion on the American Rescue Plan and the impact of municipal government. This is a $1.9 trillion stimulus package that's coming that will mean good news for the city, hopefully. Our next meeting is Tuesday, May 18th at 6 p.m. and that's it, unless there are questions. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. Am I on? Okay. And thank you for the report. This came up at the Public Works Committee meeting. We were kind of brainstorming in regard to issues around traffic and parking. And I just mentioned it as an aside to our committee chair, but I would really like to see how, if it's possible for us to have the beach shuttle be free to passengers as an incentive for them to actually use it. And what would it take? And what could we do to help make that happen? So I'd just like to throw that out there for discussion or brainstorming, or we don't have to go in depth, but just, I would like to see what's possible.
I don't think we can, unfortunately, it's not on the agenda for discussion, so that's not certainly
Where's that?
something that our Public Safety Committee or Ways and Means can pick up in a different meeting. I know that Councilmember Ward, as a representative for PARTA, could update the committee in a future meeting. I could do so as well, and obviously work with Councilmember Ward and reaching out to the.
Just a small note, something to, I'm requesting of the chair to put on the agenda in the future is, business license are coming up due on the 30th. And I'd like to look at, the ordinance and the versus, eight late. Like IRS, you, South Carolina Department of Revenue, most governmental. File the return, and the penalty's not that, and then you pay later. I just like to look at changing the ordinance on that. That way we're assured of getting the revenue in we just don't have it until later. Usually it's like 25% penalty for filing late and 5% per month for paying late.
Thank you. I know Douglas, we've got a draft agenda or a ordinance tonight to hit a piece of that. Jimmy, you're
Okay,
right.
very good,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you. Mayor, that's it.
That's it. In your next meeting?
It is. The 18th, 6 o'clock.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Public safety.
I announced, since I was absent due to a family emergency, of our Vice Chairman, Mr. Allen. I can make up on it.
So public safety met at 3 p.m. Thursday, April 8th. All were in attendance except Chair Bell. We had a number of citizen comments on a topic that may be new to you. Parking. Old business was also a discussion of parking on the non-ocean side of Palm Boulevard between 22nd and 40th Avenue. And we've got a discussion around Senate Bill S40 tonight. We'll go on some of that. We had an update from Chief Cornett on golf cart and low-speed vehicle regulations, and their chief stated that their education and enforcement campaign for golf carts and low-speed vehicles mimics that in the city of Charleston, and went through a period of warnings, and now ticketing should be happening on that regarding golf cart violations. We had department reports from Chief Hathaway. 69 calls in March, 27% increase year over year. Total calls are up about 9%. They had 2 structure fires, one on Sullivan's Island and one on Coastal Court during the month. Chief Cornett reported staff participated in Read Across America and the Polar Plunge. Also successfully retained their chief is a CALIA accreditation. Thank you. Engineer Rourke and Officer Iyer were recognized as employees of the quarter. Chief also reported 10 drug charges, 5 DUIs, and 767 parking citations in March, which is somewhat concerning, obviously, not parking, but the other piece. There were 944 calls for service in March, lower than the 1,100 last year. DUI violations are on track to exceed the number logged in 2020. Next meeting of public safety will be Thursday, May 6th at 10 a.m.
Great report. Any questions?
Mr. Mayor, I got a comment if I could.
Yes, sir, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to call out in a very positive way the Facebook page we have that I'd love to see the public take advantage of this, but it's the Isle of Palms Police Department has coffee with a cop. And I had a chance to look at the last one they did. I thought it was extremely well done. It was emceed by Corporal Hardy. Chief Cornett, of course, kicked things off, talked about angled parking. We also had an update on the coyote situation that we have on the island right now. There was discussion about domestic child abuse. And it was also good to see that Chief Cornett is the acting head of both fire department and police department now, including the fire department in that particular meeting there also. And they had a nice discussion about beach safety with children, lost children, as well as, jellyfish, stingrays, that sort of thing. So just job well done. Thank you, Chief.
Councilmember Moore.
I was just going to pile onto that. Actually, I think the police department was recognized recently from the state, acknowledging the great work they've done with DUIs. So just wanted to make the public acknowledgement. Way to go to our public safety department.
Okay, moving on. Public Works.
Public Works Committee, met 4:30 Monday, April 12th. Call in order. There was no citizen comments. Department reports by Director Pitts and Assistant Director Derek.
You got it.
Right?
I think Sarah.
Director Pitts reported that garbage and miscellaneous collection tools were normal, like yard debris collection was up to 100 tons. We had a $12,000 expense item and vehicle maintenance held in PW 26. We were watching fuel prices carefully, and we had a lot of stormwater activity in March, including our drainage barrels for hard and open business. Update on phase 3 drainage project was small. internal projects on Waterway Boulevard path elevation. It was a good presentation by Thomas and Hutton. And construction on the Forest Trail outfall scheduled to be installed on the 30th Avenue outfall. Work on 41st Avenue outfall will begin in year 23. Director Kerr said that the staff expects to learn a lot next year with the completion of the drainage master plan. We believe it would be wise where this falls in the project hierarchy rather than committing to anything. Director Kerr also said work continues on RFP and suspected to be for the master plan expected to be put out by the end of April. Planning Commission will complete analysis with the make a recommendation to Public Works Committee for the June meeting. The next 4 items were things we already discussed in Ways and Means, so I'm not going to go back and rehash that. Finally, we had a discussion on the Environmental Advisory Committee that's just in the planning stages. We look forward to work on that in the future. And we had a discussion of beach traffic and parking, just general discussion. It was quite lively. Next meeting will be Wednesday, May 5th at 4:30 p.m.
Great report. Any questions?
Mayor,
Yes.
I just wanted to add just an update from the Public Works meeting. The RFP for the comprehensive master plan for drainage is out, and we expect proposals by mid-May.
Desiree, would you mention or bring us all up to date, including public, about the meeting we're having tomorrow with beach mayors, the interior mayors and stuff?
Sure. Actually, Mayor Carroll reached out to his counterparts, the other mayors around our neighboring communities, and also reached out to the COG to facilitate a meeting with mayors, administrators, police chiefs of not only Mount Pleasant, Sullivan's Island, Edisto, and Owl Palms, but also folks from Charleston County EMS and the COG, of course. Secretary Hall from DOT will also be in attendance, and the goal is to discuss the beach traffic issues and challenges that not only affect the Owl Palms, but are affecting other beach communities, with the goal of developing some type of strategy of all of us working together to meet these new challenges that are being really pushed as a result of population growth in our Tri-County region. So we're all looking forward to it. I'm sure that the mayor will update the rest of council after we have this meeting.
And I brought that up just because it was under Jimmy's report discussing beach traffic and parking. So thank you very much. Moving on. Recreation.
Recreation Committee met Monday, April 12th with all members in attendance as well as our staff. Recreation Director Page gave us a report, and I'll try to hit the highlights. We have active spring season, which is exciting after COVID to be starting to get back to normal. Formation of a pickleball league is ongoing. Spring break soccer camp was successful. The voter safety workshop was also filled up quickly, and they are working on planning another follow-up workshop, which is great considering the amount of voting that is going on right now. We are making plans for a series of classes on the coastal environment with Julie Clift, a retired marine science teacher from Wando. So that will be pretty cool. And also successful, the Easter egg drop was very well received and something to remember. The drive-in movie maybe didn't attract as many cars as we would like, but still brought in about 40 cars. Yard sale was on April 18th, and this weekend on Saturday, we will have Day in the Park, which will include not only music, but a movie that is geared towards families. Please check out the Recreation Department's Facebook page for more information and bookmark it. We're doing a lottery. They did a lottery for Camp Summershine. We have a smaller number of campers participating, so it's going to be probably pretty much residents due to continuing to keep the numbers smaller because of COVID. But we are moving towards an online registration process. So that will happen once we get the new upgraded system with the start of the new budget year. So that is exciting and new. And don't forget the January 5th sand sculpting contest is coming up. Sorry, June 5th. Thank you, Councilmember Bell. And we had a starter conversation about the possibility of offering yoga on the beach through the rec department. But we're just getting started talking about that. And our next meeting will be Monday, May 3rd at 8 a.m. Here ends my report.
Great report. Any questions for recreation? Seeing none, moving on. Personnel.
Personnel Committee did not meet this month. I will come out of this meeting and email council with homework for the next week. We have an evaluation to complete for our city administrator. So expect that coming out of today's session. And the Personnel Committee will meet next Tuesday, next Tuesday, the 4th at 9 a.m.
Very well.
Great report.
That's why you're going to put that short, over under. Real Property Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We met at 1:30 p.m. on Monday, April the 5th, and all of our committee members were present, along with the administrator, Goso, Assistant Administrator Hannah, and then Director Carr was there as well. We also had a guest, Kirby Marshall, with ATM. And we had no citizens' comments. We didn't have any marina tenant comments either for that particular meeting. Moving on to our updates, we had an update on the Marina Dock Rehabilitation Project. Kirby Marshall of ATM gave the update, and he reported work on the bulkhead was complete. So I know that there will be some last minute things to be inspected, that sort of thing. But that project has come along very well. We do have some dock news here, and the Marina Dock project update. It looks like at this point we've got demolition of our docks, the restaurant dock and the base dock beginning Monday, May the 10th. And that's going to take about 1 week to get that done. And, then that that debris will be transported back to Salmons for processing. And then they will begin to mobilize to the site on May the 24th and begin installation of the restaurant dock and base dock. And that should take about 2 weeks to complete from what we hear. So that's pretty exciting that we've got that beginning to go. And that's going to really show, some real progress down at the marina area down there. We had an update on the proposed ADA compliant dual purpose beach boardwalk at 42nd Avenue. And it looks like we're coming along very good there. I think DHEC was very likely to approve our request that we had. And we're looking forward to getting a further update from Director Carr on that. We had the update on the proposed public dock and green space at the Alapog Marina. We are continuing through the city administration and also some volunteer efforts to really look at fundraising efforts for the public dock and for the green space. And we also continue to work with Kelly Messier and getting her feedback and input in regards to what the potential cost could be to redevelop that area down there. And we're hoping to find ways that we can offset some of that cost by concerned citizens, residents who want to really get involved and maybe have some donations. And we could also maybe utilize some Greenbelt funds and the city's tree fund as well. We didn't have any new business, and under miscellaneous business, we are going to have our next meeting changed on the islepalms.net website. Right now it says May the 3rd, but we are going to go with Tuesday, May the 4th at 1:30 p.m. So that change will be made. And I wanted to give a quick update on the restaurant also. Per Council Member Ward's request last week at Ways and Means to get a little more input on that. I'm proud to say that we do have construction permits that are in hand at this point. And Director Carr is evaluating those, and hopefully we can get those approved and get some work really going down there. And it looks like things are moving along. I don't know if Desiree or Director Carr, if either of you want to say something at this point, but it looks like we're finally getting moving here. And they had done the demolition. I think it was necessary, and also I think there's some awning repair permit work that's done. So there is work that's been done inside. I mean, it's it was pretty considerable, but it would be good to see some of the work we're getting that's the actual construction. Desiree?
Yes, I, the only thing that I would add to your report and update is that according to the timeline that the restaurant tenants have provided to the city back in February, they're estimating about a 4-month time period between receiving a construction permit from the city and completing the work the outdoor work around their site, and about 5 to 6 months for the work to be completed in the building. So that's really the only information that we receive in terms of timeline. That obviously can depend any unforeseen circumstances, weather, and I'm sure that those dates will be refined as they start moving along. But I know that there's a lot of angst and interest from the community about when the restaurant will open. We can, look at that timeline and the number of months that it would take. We have an idea of when they might be able to do that later this year.
Thank you. That's right. That concludes my report. Oh,
Any questions for real property?
I just want to add to, as an update, that the RFP for the 42nd Avenue Beach Walkover work is out, and we're expecting proposals by the first week of May.
I'd like to add one question. Talked about several permits. The permits have been submitted for the restaurant.
Yes, they were submitted middle of last week.
Okay.
We expect to be able to issue the permits by the end of this week. They seem to be, anxious to get started, so.
Very good. Thank you very much. Let's put you on the spot. Okay, moving on. Reports from city officers, boards, and commissions. Accommodations Tax Advisory Committee, no meeting. Board of Zoning Appeals, no meeting. Planning Commission, minutes are attached. Reports from special or joint meetings, none. Petitions received, referred, disposed of, none. Now we get on to the fun stuff. Bills already in possession of council. Emergency ordinance 2021-04. An ordinance to extend the state of emergency, alter emergency protocols in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. To create discussion, I have a motion that we extend it 60 days. Do I hear a second? Discussion.
What all does this entail? Just mask, everything, or what?
Well, it's all in there.
Just for the public, I've read it, but.
Desiree, you want to give us a brief outline, and also when you give us the outline, let's talk about some of our surrounding communities and what they have done. I think it might help come clarify.
Sure.
You don't want me to read this whole thing, I'll be winning bet.
Okay, so the motion to extend the existing ordinance includes extending the state of emergency for an additional 60 days. It also extends the ability for council to hold either hybrid or virtual meetings in the event of an emergency, even though council has decided to initiate in-person meetings as we have done for the past 2 months. It continues to authorize the city administrator to develop and enact any additional plans in order to ensure that the delivery of government services continues to happen without any impact. The city administrator will also be authorized to cancel or revoke any special permits during those 60 days. The emergency ordinance 2020-10, which requires the use of face masks by both employees and patrons into food and service establishments, would be extended for an additional 60 days. Short-term rentals will continue to be subject to following the safety standards and guidelines that have been provided by the city's task force that worked on this last year. And this would expire upon the state of emergency expiring, which would be in an additional 60 days unless it's extended again after 60 days. It requires restaurants and businesses to comply with any new ordinances or orders that come from the governor's office. And restaurants would be authorized to continue offering outside dining during the state of emergency, as long as they're continuing to follow the guidelines from the Restaurant and Lodging Association.
And Desiree, compared to our surrounding communities, Sullivan Town, Mount Pleasant, Charleston, Folly Beach.
Yes, I know that there's been some questions about mask ordinances and them being somewhat different depending on, different from municipality to municipality. So for the city of Charleston, they are requiring masks to be worn in public buildings, retail stores, restaurants, salons, pharmacies, and while participating in any city gathering or using any commercial public transport. There are exceptions for eating, drinking, smoking, whenever someone's in a private office or while seated at a restaurant, for any medical or religious reasons. And also if first responders, if they're actively engaged in a public safety matter of an emergency nature, would be exempted from wearing a face mask. So will children under 10. Those restrictions expire May 14th. For the town of Mount Pleasant.
Desiree, if I may, they removed all fines associated with violations.
Correct, you're correct. They had a $100 fine and that's been rescinded. Mount Pleasant, their face mask ordinance expired on April 15th. We currently don't have any mask wearing requirements in place. Sullivan's Island, they have a mask ordinance that's very similar to the city's. That one expires June 5th unless it's renewed by their town council. North Charleston has a mask ordinance in place and that is tied to the mayor's state of emergency. So as long as that continues to be renewed, their face mask would do so as well. Somerville, their mask ordinance expired April 8th. They do have a resolution in place strongly encouraging the use of masks. James Island also expired April 15th. They are recommending the use of face masks indoors, but not required. And Folly Beach has a permanent face mask ordinance that either expires in May or whenever the state of emergency by the governor is lifted.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, when does our current ordinance sunset?
May 12th.
Any other, yes?
Yeah, I'm trying to be a little pragmatic, and I would ask the police chief, in this entire time, have we issued any citations for a face mask?
No, sir, we have not.
As I thought, and there seems, I don't know where everybody else is at. I've been fully vaccinated, so I've certainly got less concerns than some others might have. But to me, we're kind of publicly at a place where it is largely personal choice. I would highly recommend that businesses continue to act in the best efforts, if you will, for the public that chooses to go to those businesses. But if we're not enforcing, and we've got a massive amount of people coming from all over that have no idea what our ordinances are at this point. And it would appear to me that every time I go to a store in Mount Pleasant, 90% of the people are wearing masks. There's no ordinance in place that's forcing that. So I don't know pragmatically that we're accomplishing anything by continuing an ordinance when we would appear to me, and I've been strongly in favor of these ordinances that we've had, but at this point, it seems to me that the general public is in a personal choice mode of operation. Just thought I'd put it out there.
Councilmember Gannon, and then
I agree. I didn't support the emergency ordinance. I agree. I didn't support the emergency ordinance last time it came around.
only because of the fact that we've started to see more people take a responsibility for themselves. And like I said, like Randy said, there's a lot of folks who still are wearing them. And I would just assume just pass a resolution to encourage it and not mandate it. Obviously, we're creating laws that are not being enforced. Yeah. That's nothing on the police department, but it's really, it is really it's a super unenforceable law. And when we're going to extend it 60 days, what's the tolerance for it? What's the threshold? What's the science behind it? Yeah. But I agree with Randy, and let's if nothing else, just pass a resolution to encourage it, and let's move on.
Councilmember Ross.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I totally agree with Councilmember Brandy and Ryan. I made it a purpose to talk to the employees as I go to the store or the drugstore or wherever I go. And I said, how do you wear that mask all day long? And it's like, I can't wait for 5 minutes alone time so I can go in a corner and take my mask off. I can't breathe during the day. And I think we're forgetting about those people. Now, if the store elects to mandate the masks, then that's up to them and that's up to their employees. But I think it's time that we sunset this and move on and not regulate it.
Councilmember Streetman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'm just going to basically echo what the others have said here so far. I mean, I think people are taking tremendous personal responsibility on their own to protect their own safety and that of their family and others for that matter. And where the mask will still be mandated, or maybe, it's a corporate type venture we have going on around here, it may still be mandated that customers and employees continue to wear the mask, and that's fine. But I do think that we do need to sunset this. I'm totally in favor of a resolution recommending that for the interest of their own self-interest and also the interest and safety of others, that suggesting a mask. But let's just move on.
Okay. Anyone else?
Some clarity, are we talking about, when we say sunsetting, are we talking about extending just and letting it die on May 12th?
Yes.
Okay. Because, I mean, I think it's worth noting that even though many people have had the opportunity to be vaccinated, if you're getting a second dose, it really takes a month before you are fully protected. So I think that's worth noting. So I feel more comfortable if we're sunsetting May 12th. And would like to chime in on encouraging continued mask wearing in the time being.
Councilmember Moore.
Just a quick comment, just for putting it out there, because the governor opened up for every adult over the age of 16 on April 1st or early April. So the timing of what happened that adds up in terms of access to vaccines and people taking responsibility.
Anyone else? I'm gonna say my one little piece. I did talk to the folks at Harris Teeter. I can't thank them enough for staying open during this pandemic. They're the ones who are greatly exposed all the time, and they kind of like having us, especially when they have so many. Again, I just retext them on my own and no official capacity when we get some feedback. Okay, I think we're ready for.
Mayor, I just make comment. I want to thank Delta Pharmacy as well while we're at it, who was also administering vaccines and working diligently on behalf of this community. I think they deserve some accolades.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, just a quick question about the action that council is going to take in regards to the emergency ordinance. It sounds to me that council will extend it past May 12th with the exception of the face mask requirement, or will council not extend the emergency ordinance, any of the points that are included there past May 12th?
I do believe we should be allowing restaurants to still have outdoor seating.
Correct. So there are a couple of items in that emergency ordinance that I would recommend that the city continue to maintain for an additional 60 days in the, for example, the remote meetings. I mean, it doesn't seem like anything else is up for debate other than the face mask ordinance. If that's the case, I would recommend an amendment striking that section from the emergency ordinance if everything else is
Do I
supposed
hear an
to be.
amendment?
I make an amendment to strike the base mass requirement from the proposed motion.
Second. Just comment to that, and we're pleased with the recommendation. You know, not mandatory, but, you know, certainly it's personal discretion. Jimmy, I'm not trying to jump.
No, I would like to keep it as it stands and then make a separate resolution. I think
Okay, that's
it'd be
fine.
stronger, Randy, to make a separate resolution saying that we strongly recommend.
Yeah, Jimmy, no problem.
Okay, so given an amendment, a second.
Motion to amend is to strike section 6 of the emergency ordinance requiring phase one. Councilmember,
Sorry, point of clarity. Does this replace the existing emergency ordinance in effect?
No, this would go into effect on May 12th. So the city's,
Okay. Because it says, the last line says this emergency shall take effect upon signing of this emergency ordinance.
we'll amend that.
Okay.
So it would go into effect whenever the.
Sunset.
The expiration.
Correct.
Councilmember Pounds,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Bell,
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan,
Aye.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Moy,
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman,
Aye.
Councilmember Hobson,
Aye.
Mayor Carroll,
Aye.
all in favor of the amendment?
Councilmember Buchanan has a question before.
I do, thank you. I think one of the things we need to look at is just, and I hate saying the new normals, but there's a lot of new normals out there now that we're trying to deal with. And the idea that restaurants were limited to indoor services. And I think that's one thing that we're gonna have to look at as a community and to allow, to take this back to real property and allow restaurants either through zoning or whatever, that they can have service outdoors. And I know somehow then Douglas, I'm not that, I'm not asking you to chime in on this right now, but the ability for restaurants to have outdoor service in those areas, because it extends those footprints for them. Perhaps not in, not on JC Long Boulevard in the right of ways, but within their own footprint. I believe that's what we need to do.
Okay, back to the amendment. Motion.
Motion has amended.
As
Yes.
Could you read the motion?
The motion is what Desiree, Administrator Fregoso read to extend all that minus section.
Okay.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Moy,
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman,
Aye.
Councilmember Hobson,
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan,
Aye.
Councilmember Bell,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith, Councilmember Pounds,
Aye.
Mayor Carroll,
Aye.
all in favor of the motion as amended?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to propose a resolution that this body supports in strong terms the wearing of face masks and in public places as previously required.
So,
Point of order on that?
The fact that we don't have a resolution on the agenda.
yeah, we can certainly draft one and present it to city council at their May meeting for adoption.
Thank you. I'm not slapping your hand.
Not either.
Chair will have a comedian next to you. Introduction of new bills, resolution, proclamations, consideration of ordinance 2105, an ordinance to raise revenue and adopted budget for the city of Isle Palm, South Carolina for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2022. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion. Once. Councilman Smith?
I'm curious to know how we're gonna publicize this for the public in advance of the second reading vote, and it would become final.
Yes, we are planning to have several notices in the paper, encouraging folks to attend the public hearing, which will be held in right before the May council meeting. We're also going to be sharing, we've also been sharing information about the initiatives that are included in this year's budget on the website and encouraging public participation that way. So we'll have at least another month for feedback from the community before you all consider ratification of the budget in May.
And when you say the paper, are you talking about our local newspaper, the Island Eye? And
We're required to do it through the Post and Courier, but we'll definitely share it with our local paper as well.
Okay, anything else? Hearing none?
You got no, one brief comment, sir.
Yes, sir, please.
I'd like to congratulate the staff, treasurer, administrator, Chairman Pounds on a very smooth budget process so far this year with no tax increase.
We like that.
Right?
Okay. Nicole?
Councilmember Powell,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith. Aye. Councilmember Bell.
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan.
Aye.
Councilmember Thompson.
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Moy.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Mayor Carroll.
Aye.
All in favor?
Thank you very much. Consideration of ordinance 2021-06, an ordinance amending Title VII, licensing and regulation, Chapter 1, business licenses, Article A, general provisions. I'm going to let Douglas Carr do this presentation. I'll screw it up.
Just turn that on.
Excuse the language.
I may very well screw this up too, because it's very convoluted. So this amendment is dealing with, it is in response to the business license standardization bill that was passed by the state legislature this year. This is the first, we know there will be at least two ordinances. The second one will be more in-depth and it will deal with really the meat of that legislation. This one is really a stopgap measure to deal with the timing of the rental license. The rental licenses are on a staggered term from what the state law requires. And this is going to try to align the state law with our current code. Because of that timing, this is calling for basically a 6-month rental license. And because it's only for 6 months, we have included in it basically a prorated fee at half of the rate of the existing fee. We do think in discussions with the treasurer that the city will get kind of this license fee that will be largely in next fiscal year. And then there will be an additional rental license fee that will be for a full year also in that fiscal year. So we don't expect it to have a negative impact on the budget. In fact, it may have a slight positive impact to the budget. But it's really capturing that gap that's being created by this new legislation. And, you know, we've been spending countless hours with the treasurer and the treasurer with the municipal association. What we're proposing to do here is aligning with what other communities are doing that also have this the staggering issue. They're basically doing kind of a catch-up interim license. We do expect that there will need to be some significant dialogue with the rental licensing community to just explain this to them. So we're prepared to do that. This one, these renewals will go out though here in the next couple of months. We wanted to get it out and be sure that you all were aware of what's happening and that our code is in line with what we're doing.
Any questions? Okay. Yes, ma'am. We have a motion. I need a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second. Discussion. Hearing none.
Very good. Councilmember Buchanan.
Aye.
Councilmember Bell.
Aye.
Councilmember. Aye. Councilmember Pounds.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Councilmember Moy.
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Thompson.
Aye.
Mayor Carroll.
Aye.
All in favor?
Thank you very much. Douglas, don't go anywhere. Consideration of ordinance 2107, ordinance amending Title V, Planning and Development, Chapter 4, Article 8, flood damage prevention. sir.
Yes, this is also, I would kind of categorize this one as a housekeeping amendment. And this deals specifically with what is called in the community a freeboard requirement. Basically, FEMA establishes a requirement elevation, and then communities will establish some amount over that is required to be elevated. In our community, historically, that's been 1 foot. And we do get credit in the residents' insurance premiums. There is basically a 20% reduction because of these additional things that we do. This requirement has been part of the building code, and the building code is part of our code by reference. But the CRS community is saying that that is no longer sufficient getting that credit. So this is basically adopting what is already adopted in the building code in our actual local code to provide clarity and really to continue to get that CRS credit rating.
Questions? Councilmember Thompson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So Douglas, with the new FEMA maps, a lot of houses and lots and stuff are out of the flood zone. So if it's out of the flood zone, how is the board affected?
Yeah, so if it's out of the flood zone, there's no requirement to elevate it at all. So this freeboard would have no impact if you're out of the floodplain. Just those that have a required elevation, it adds an additional foot.
Got it.
Douglas, just from my point of view, I don't know what FEMA was thinking. Lowering the standards.
I would just add that this council, I think, very wisely established an island-wide minimum at 14 feet, regardless of what the flood maps say. So almost in every situation, that requirement is this requirement anyway. So it has a more meaningful impact on existing houses that are subject to the 50% rule. But really, for a new construction project, the 14-foot requirement is always going to be higher than the flood requirement plus 4.
Thank you for that clarification.
Ms. Rick,
Councilmember Smith.
this is obviously confusing for the general public.
Right.
Do we have anything on the website that is geared towards kind of making it easy to understand these changes, how they impact people on our website, or are we doing anything in
Well,
social media?
so I would just say that this change actually is not changing anything because
That's
it's
true.
already the law of the land by virtue of being in the building.
And I guess I'm actually referring to the FEMA flood map changes and all of that, actually.
We do have a page. We do have a flood damage prevention page on the city's website. I will tell you, I don't think that it adds a great deal of clarity because it is it's a very convoluted issue. And generally, when people want clarity, they call the office and we just talk through their specific situation.
So you're there for them if they have questions about how all of these changes.
More than I want to be. I say that in jest. Anybody that has any questions, we have the files, the historic files, and we actually encourage people to call in because it is almost down to a lot by lot and house by house situation because it all hinges off how high the existing floor of that existing house is. There's no way really to know that without calling us and talking to us.
I wonder too, if there are people who are impacted with changes that are totally unaware that there is any change, they don't follow this very closely and just don't know.
Yeah, it obviously has insurance implications, and so we're getting we are getting a lot of interest in the issue by virtue of insurance savings. So there's a fair amount of buzz about the whole issue.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Hearing none, gonna go.
Motion to approve ordinance 2021-07.
Second.
More discussion? Nicole?
Councilmember Pounds.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith. Aye. Councilmember Bell.
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan.
Aye.
Councilmember Hobson.
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Moy.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Mayor Carroll.
Aye.
All in favor?
Thank you very much. I'm gonna save us all a lot of time and effort here in the resolution for safety. I'll read the first paragraph and let's just go from there. Whereas the city of Isle Palms realizes that it has a responsibility to provide a safe work environment for its employees and that each pursues the highest standards for his or her assigned activities. All municipal employees must recognize the well-being of the persons involved in the protection of our physical resources are as important as the activity and work being performed. And it goes on from there. Do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Any discussion? Anybody want to hear anything else? Okay, Nicole?
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Councilmember Moy.
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Hobson.
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan. Councilmember Bell.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith. Aye. Councilmember Pounds.
Aye.
Mayor Carroll.
Aye.
All in favor?
Thank you very much. Here's where it starts bogging down. Miscellaneous business. A, discussion of the city's position regarding South Carolina State Bill S40. Yes, sir. Mr. Bell.
I'll be happy to take the, as Chair of Public Safety, the questions continue to pour in, and I think it's worth us clarifying that while the city has not adopted any resolutions and other communities have, this does not in any way mean that this council or any individual council member thinks S40 is a good idea. So I'm going to speak on behalf of myself. I've looked at it. I've had numerous conversations with residents. I'm still very troubled by the vague and ambiguous language. It looks candidly as if it's pandering for votes off island. And I'm just going to call it the way that I see it. When you have ambiguous language that says, may do something, will do something under the discretion of SCDOT and appears to remove a lot of the home rule rights that communities have enjoyed in South Carolina for a long time, it becomes very troubling. And I think the thing that we need to look at and be really careful, while the language for barrier islands was removed from the amended bill, until such time that the state looks at communities that are beachfront communities like Myrtle Beach, you have a predominant amount of paid parking already with the beachfront streets turned over to the city. But it leaves 4 communities targeted by a bill that has no impact on anybody else in the state. And I think that's something that we ought to defend strongly our rights as a city to determine what's safe for this community. I had a long conversation with Administrator Fregoso about this, and we'll continue to have a conversation, I'm sure, with SCDOT. I think the prudent move for us as a council is moving this back to the Public Safety Committee with sound legal advice. There's many things in this bill that SCDOT already had the rights to do. So to me, it's netting this down to what are those few things that cause us concerns as a community. And, I hate to say it, but at some point playing defense and just saying, right now, S40, high probability of passing tomorrow. It passes, what does that mean to us? It's not doing anything to us until SCDOT attempts to remove the 2015 parking plan, further encroaches on home rule rights. At that point, I think we need to have a clear understanding of what the city's legal position would be, and that we're in a position to react accordingly. But until then, I'm not in hair on fire mode over S40. I think it's prudent for us to move it to Public Safety Committee and continue to have intelligent discussion about this bill. That's all I got here.
Thank you, Councilmember Bell. Anyone else, I guess, speak up on S40?
Yeah, Mayor, I would totally agree with Randy on this topic. We need time to, we've had time to look at it. Everybody's read and done a lot of research on their own. That I think to Randy's point, we just need fact-based conversation and come up with a plan as opposed to trying to crash something on the fly tonight, in my opinion.
Anyone else? Just for everybody, I've addressed our state house, and it was clear that no matter what we said, they weren't going to listen. They listened to more social media and more for votes than anything else. no matter what. I think a community knows what's best for its community. And when they pick out 4 communities out of 282 communities in South Carolina, and you're only going after 4, and 278 are left, that seems like they're picking on 4 communities. So anyway, I totally concur with Councilmember Bell. I'm totally against State Bill S40. But all of our council has spoken up for, and I'm proud of us for our stance. Moving on. Discussion and consideration of changing the majority voting to a plurality in the next municipal election. Do I hear a motion?
Make a motion. I'll second.
Discussion. Councilmember Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll repeat as little as possible from my question to Mr. Kramer from earlier, but I think our goal in any changes to the way that elections are conducted is in improving the representation of our community. That's the question that we have to ask ourselves. And, as I was researching this I was intrigued by the ranked choice voting that I mentioned, and I understand that it's not common in the state, but it is endorsed by some pretty reputable organizations. The South Carolina League of Women Voters, which puts out all the voting information for every local election, endorses this as their preferred voting method. The body that publishes the Robert's Rules of Order recommends this as their preferred election method. Because of it offers all of the benefits of both plurality and the majority. It has, obviously, there's no perfect way to capture what everybody wants, but it sounds like a pretty good approach. I think our community is of the size and of the staffing to be able to potentially take on a pilot like that. So I would like to see us at least consider, I don't know how we work with the state, I keep looking at the city administrator to see if this is even feasible. I would much prefer us, again, in the spirit of trying to get the most representative vote in every election, mitigate any kind of strategic voting games that could be played that could sway one way or the other. That's, the problem with the plurality is that you might have 9 candidates and, you get somebody who's really not favored by a majority of the community. And, when the election that I was elected into, we had 12 candidates when it started out. And, Councilmember Buchanan and I came in on the runoff. And that particular election, I think, had a significant voter turnout, if I recall correctly. Our community is not like others. So I'm not necessarily advocating for majority or plurality. I'd love to explore the option of piloting to Mr. Kramer's point, a more, frankly, a significantly more optimized approach.
Anyone else? Councilmember Smith and then McKean.
I'm intrigued and would like to see it explored. I got the impression that maybe it's not possible in under South Carolina law. Did I misunderstand? Or is that something that you're advocating that we can?
You're correct. It's not allowed by state code today. The city could certainly advocate to the state legislature to consider making amendments to the state code to allow that kind of method voting, but we wouldn't be able to do it in non-municipal elections without that happening.
So maybe we could be a trendsetter.
I thought you mentioned it was possible under a pilot provision in the state code.
Councilmember Buchanan.
I think that's what he said.
I thought it still had to be.
Yeah, I can get more information from ISAC. I don't understand it, that would be available for this year as a pilot provision. And I frankly don't know what steps we would need to take to be considered as a pilot provision. But certainly can do some more research, talk to them and bring more information for your consideration.
Thank you. There's a lot changing in the city. We recently had a vote to try to decrease the size of council and got voted down. Then when we were in Zoom meetings, when we come back to chambers, it got voted back in. Well, I'm not sure why that was it. Now we're moving on to this. I don't understand, what was the impetus for this? Was it asked to be put on the agenda? Was the discussion about it? Was it from the,
Yes, when Isaac was appointed, he and I had a conversation about particularly how to bring absentee voting over here.
Mhm.
And this has been discussed back in the past before the former city clerk moved out and retired, not moved out, retired. And it's a question that I've been asked by several council members. So I posed the question to them, and he actually encouraged the city to have that conversation because we are one of the few municipalities that still have a majority. And he talked about the challenges with it being, particularly as it relates to the runoff elections being on Thanksgiving week. So it's something that the Personnel Committee talked about a couple years ago. And again, got questions from several members in the past few weeks and just bringing, I asked Isaac to be here to address any questions.
I guess what concerns me the most is the fact that, like it had mentioned before, is the fact that you can have somebody who not get elected to office and not have the majority of the vote from the public and not have, majority representation. I can count on my hand, I'm serving this community for 22 years and can count on my hand and then a few digits how many times we've had a runoff election. The general election, if there's a runoff, there's always going to be 2 weeks after, that general election. But I just don't understand it. I'm not sure why the impetus of it is, why it's going on now, why the whole big change in government, change in voting, change in everything that's going on in the city is going on. It's not a drive from the community. It's not a drive from our citizens asking for it. So I'm assuming it's coming from council, trying to push for it, and I'm not sure what the reason is for.
Councilmember Bell.
Yeah, I don't believe it's coming from council. As the generation of this, I don't think this plurality discussion, my question of Desiree, when she mentioned it to me, and being on personnel committee is, from an administrative perspective, why wouldn't we do it? And what's the benefit of doing it? And I will say I'm a little bit intrigued because I have no knowledge of what Councilmember Moy is talking about in terms of that methodology. I don't, personally, don't have an opinion one way or the other, whether we do it or we don't do it. I think the right amount of thought needs to go into it. I think the right amount of discussion, the right amount of understanding, and are we under any deadline? Things that have to go back to a legislative session that ends on May 13th to begin with. If we had to go to the state legislature with their plate full and anticipating that we could do something as a trial, I don't think it's highly likely. But I think this does warrant more discussion before we just jump in and go, let's vote on something that, like I said, I can tell you personally, I'm kind of neutral. I think, there's the potential for a lot of seats being open. There's a high likelihood that there would be runoffs, something everybody's dealt with. And if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't,
The question was asked of me if this is something that the city would consider just because of the efficiencies that it would generate for municipal elections in general. Certainly, there are pros and cons with the method of voting, and that's a policy decision for you all to make. And the request was made to address city council to bring the question forward, answer questions that you may have in terms of process before you all make a decision. Certainly not something that you all have to do. Correct. Correct. I mean, these are questions that have been presented to me in the past by members of council that I didn't know the answer to. Therefore, I think the right person to talk to was the executive director of the Charleston Board of Elections. It's certainly not something that you will have to vote on or act on for this municipal election or a future one. It's really just bringing before you all information and options for you all to consider because it's done differently in other municipalities.
If I may add on a question, we will move towards voting on whether we have 9 or 7. Is this the kind of issue that could be put to referendum as well and let the community participate in how they choose to elect their representatives?
I would look at the city attorney to answer that question, whether you can include it. I would think that you could, even as an advisory. You could do an advisory referendum question, non-binding, to get some feedback. Certainly an option that we can look into.
Yeah, I don't like ramming something down the community's throats that hasn't had proper debate.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just want to reinforce too that I was as surprised as anyone when I saw this on the agenda that was published the other day because I'd had no conversation at all and not been asked the question. I was very familiar that there are a lot of municipalities that are doing, that moved away from majority voting. I was aware of that, but it was never anything that came to mind for me. So I do think that all the discussion we've had here is worthy of us looking into as to what our options may be, getting more input and more, more community knowledge as to what this will entail.
Councilmember Buchanan.
Just to follow up. So I would, like I said, this is the first time that it's kind of been brought up. It hasn't gone through committee. The reason it's to make a decision on something that hasn't really thoroughly been vetted or discussed. And like I said, as you said, it's, perhaps it was brought up from discussions that council members have had with you. So it wasn't just brought up from those folks. I mean, so obviously there is a push to try and get it before council and before the people. So I would just assume have it go through the proper channels and go through committee and figure out whether some of the things that Councilman Boyd has talked about or just going through the proper channels as we would with any other vote.
My little 10-cent worth of Councilmember Ward.
On the way.
Oh, please.
I just wanted to address Councilmember Buchanan. Oh, wait, I agree with you. Everything's so confusing. Are we talking about, when you talk going through channels, Brian, are you talking about the plurality? Or are you talking about reducing the number of council members? Because I'm not quite, like you said, I'm not quite sure where that is. Before, it was off the table, now it's back on the table. Is it going to be on the ballot in November? Nobody knows.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the majority of council supported to put that on the ballot.
Oh, in November.
Yeah.
Okay, if that's true, I'm formally right now would like to say that I'd like the city to stay out of this. And that means that to take no position one way or the other. That happened with the marina, what was that, 4 years ago, and it was just a mess. So I don't want the city to make a recommendation. Council members can recommend whatever they like to do, but I don't want the city to make a form, make it look like the city is behind changing this or not changing this. It's very important. I don't know how you're going to get the word out, maybe the League of Women's Voters, but nobody knows, right, Ryan?
Well, not in this one. A number of council members didn't know about the polarity until they got the agenda. So, because there hasn't been previous discussion on it. So, as for the change of size of government, I think people are still kind of confused about it because the fact that it was voted down once, and then got brought back up, and then was voted in. So, I think that's where a lot of that confusion lies.
Let me clarify a couple of things for you all. Number one, I think, when it comes to a referendum, it's not us who's making that decision. It's the residents of Isle Palms, the majority of the residents of Isle Palms. And I don't care whether we have 7 members, 5 members, or 9 members, but I think the residents of Isle Palms can make that decision for us. And plurality, again, I don't care one way or the other, but it does save money. He brought up great points when Isaac was speaking. We can put that as part of our referendum and let the residents choose, not council, not 9 members here, but all the registered voters on Isle Palms.
Not too much going on.
Mayor, if I may.
It's a small election, not a national election.
Mayor, if I may. I think the clarity, not to mix this up with 7 versus 9, because it's not the same discussion. The difference of adding this to the referendum is it would have no impact on this election this November. If we were to pass something now without the right amount of forethought, it would have an impact on this election. I don't know that we need to change rules for this election. If we're looking at the broader issue, the 7 could get voted down, plurality or any other would get voted down. The residents would have a chance to understand, to be a participant in the government and not have something changed without good thought by this council.
And just a point of clarity too, the referendum action taken by council was to develop a referendum question. So that still has to be approved by the city council through ordinance, which would require 2 readings. So all that council has voted on is to develop and bring forward a referendum question about reducing the size of council. But that still has to be approved through 2 readings.
Clarification, we have to have it on the board, pass an ordinance to get it on the ballot?
Correct.
By June.
Okay.
Correct.
Sorry.
So that would give an opportunity for the members of the public to express, what they believe you all should consider as
So
when you vote for that.
for this esteemed body, do we want plurality on there as a part of the question or not?
I think this was put on the
We have a
agenda for just to give you all information from
Okay.
ISAC, presenting and answer any questions about what other people do, because we always get that question, what are other folks doing? So this was just as an information, getting ISAC to be able to speak to you all. He's a new director, and be available for answering.
But there was a motion, a second on this.
Who made the motion?
Okay, so let's withdraw the
I think
motion,
you
and send
did.
it back to personnel committee, so I'll make that.
Did you?
Not-
No.
that we withdraw the motion.
And I'll withdraw the second.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on. Now it's mine. Next meeting, regular council, May 25th, 6 p.m. And do I hear a motion to go into executive session pursuant to section 30-470A2 to receive legal update and legal advice regarding eviction proceedings against Tidal Wave Water Sports?
I'll make the
Council
motion.
may take action on items. No decisions will be made during the executive session. Very much. All in favor?
Councilmember Thompson?
Aye.
Mayor Carroll?
Aye.